Welcome everyone, this is AndresRestart. I am joined by Nonsense Nerd, Mars, Monolith64, and What About Nintendo to talk about this topic I have here for today. The question is it crazy to think that Metroid Prime 4 and Bayonetta 3 could come out in 2019? Now, before I let everyone else talk, because I like to talk forever, I just first want to say that the reason why I'm even doing this particular discussion video, one, because it's fun, obviously, but also two, because I've noticed a lot of people on the Twitters and such have kind of been insinuating that it's crazy to think that these games could come out in 2019. But I'm not saying they will happen no matter what, but I feel like there's a pretty darn good chance that they could come out. What do you guys think? Where do you guys stand on Metroid Prime 4 and Bayonetta 3 coming out in 2019, or not?
I definitely think Metroid Prime 4 has the better chance because it's been announced for longer, but I don't see why Bayonetta 3 couldn't come out as well. But if I had to say one or the other, but I think it could, obviously I think it could be both, but if I had to say one or the other, I think I'd be Metroid Prime 4, but I mean, there's a small possibility that neither of them could come out. But I'm going to say no on that. I'm going to say one is definitely going to come out, and there's a large possibility that both could.
Okay.
So, I personally think that it's a good chance that they both will come out, and more or less it's because, like, I'm thinking of, like, the big AAA Nintendo first-party games coming out this year. Like, other than the new Pokemon game, I really can't think of anything else that's mainstream. Like, 2017 had Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey. Like, those are two huge games. They came out the same year, and I mean, those aren't small by any means. Like, one doesn't trump the other. They're both at the very peak. So I feel like Bayonetta 3 and, you know, Metroid Prime 4 are the same level as far as popularity, that I would say that it's a very possibility that they would come out this year, because I mean, what else would they put out this year? Unless they haven't announced something else, but...
Well, they have Yoshi, which is first party, but it's not huge by any means. They have Fire Emblem, which is pretty big, but although it's may not be super mainstream, but it's definitely getting there. And
we got Luigi's Mansion 3.
Luigi's Mansion, yep.
And the real big one, actually, Animal Crossing, sales-wise on the 3DS is about as big as Pokemon. So in terms of for the investors, the things that they're looking at are Pokemon and Animal Crossing. Fire Emblem, Yoshi, and even Metroid and Bayonetta, assuming they come out this year, those titles aren't, historically speaking, they have not sold beyond the 2 million mark, right? Like, that's not really what they do. Oh, maybe Yoshi, I have to double check that, but the other ones aren't really considered to be, like, super mainstream games. Fire Emblem did take it up a notch on the 3DS, but it's not, like, you know, they don't really, at least if you look at the sales, they don't necessarily go too much beyond 2 million copies sold for each game. So I guess it kind of depends on your expectations from that perspective. Metroid Prime is never really sold that much, but I personally believe that Metroid Prime is going to be pushed as, like, the hardcore killer app for this year, right? Like, last year we got Smash and Pokemon at the end of the year, and the year before that we got Mario Odyssey, Xenoblade 2, and Pokemon on the 3DS. That did come out, right? There was a 3-month window where we got Mario, then a big Pokemon game, and then Xenoblade. It's just the Pokemon game was on the 3DS, but Nintendo's combining their audience a bit with the Switch, so I do think that Nintendo's gonna have, like, a big game for October and November and maybe even December. Personally, I'm thinking we're getting Luigi's Mansion 3 in October, Pokemon obviously in November, and then Metroid in December. They've kind of pretty much done that the last couple of years. So I think there's going to be at least one of those games. I think Metroid is going to get a big push this year. So I think it makes sense. A lot of people have brought up that, oh, there hasn't been any gameplay for this game, so why could you possibly think that they could come out this year? But we also haven't seen gameplay for Pokemon or Animal Crossing, and they both were announced just months ago, and they're both slated for this year. Yet Bayonetta 3 was announced in 2017, and Metroid Prime 4 was also announced even earlier in 2017.
Right. Wasn't 2017 the E3 where Pokemon was also announced, where they had, like, just the creator sitting there in a chair?
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
Yes.
Wasn't that the same?
But I think there was the confusion if that was meant to be Pokemon Let's Go, or of the.
I believe they clarified that to mean the 2019 title because it was supposed to be like the core game.
Okay. So then technically I just said that Pokemon was announced last year. Technically, if they meant if they meant the next generation, then they did announce that in 2017 as well. But it was announced at the same time as Metroid Prime 4. So they're on the same time frame in terms of being announced. And if Pokemon's coming out in November, why is it crazy to think that Metroid can't come out holiday season as well?
And I mean, Smash was announced in what, March?
Last year. April? It came out in December, so
it came out the same year.
A 9-month time frame, and then
we didn't see any gameplay of that till E3.
Yeah, and then Mario Odyssey was announced, and it came out all within the same year, and the same thing with Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So I just see a lot of people making the argument that, hey, you're being unreasonable to suggest that these games can come out. They haven't shown any gameplay, but they were announced already almost 2 years ago, and by the time I think they're gonna come out, it's gonna be 2.5 years after they were announced. 2.5 years from announcement to release is a long time. There are very few games from Nintendo that take that long. The only ones I can think of are Breath of the Wild, like a couple of Zelda games, and that's only because they get delayed a year or two. And technically the Pikmin game, but that's not even officially, it hasn't had a formal announcement yet. It was just kind of like mentioned by Shigeru Miyamoto a couple of times in interviews. So for that reason, I don't think it's crazy to think these games can come out this year, and I do think there's more games for Nintendo to show off besides the ones that we know that are confirmed for this year.
I am a bit iffy about Bayonetta 3. It's weird because like some part of me is like, oh no, Bayonetta 3 is not going to come out. But then I'm also like thinking, but like, why would they show it off at the Game Awards if it was going to be like super far away? Like they didn't even need to show that off. They just showed it off because they could. Like, why show it off, like, super far in advance if you don't even have to? Right. So that's a little weird.
That's something Sony likes to do, is announce games, like, 10 years before they come out. So, Nintendo's pretty good at announcing a game and releasing it pretty soon after they announce it. But Bayonetta is not Nintendo. It's a third-party exclusive, so they can do whatever they feel like doing. Like Final Fantasy VII Remake, that was announced years ago. We haven't seen anything new in forever. And Spider-Man took years, and God of War took years, and Last of Us taken years. So it's like everyone but Nintendo kind of does that. So Bayonetta 3 could take another couple of years, because Nintendo.
Theoretically it could. But like, actually, I think it's worth looking up when Bayonetta 2 was announced and when it came out.
I didn't care about Bayonetta until I played the second one.
So it was the Bayonetta 2 announcement trailer came out 2012.
Okay, so 2 years.
2 years. Okay. I mean, the Switch came out in 2012. So I mean, Wii U came out in 2012. So 2 years, right? So if you base it off that historical precedent, right? Like 2.5 years after Bayonetta 3 is announced, to say it can't come out 2.5 years afterwards.
Well, so it was announced 2017, right?
Yes.
Game Awards is December, so 2.5 years after that would be like midway through 2020.
True.
Yeah.
It would be 2 years. It would be 2 years come December. Right. Metroid Prime 4, however, was announced E3 2017. So come this June, it'll be 2 years. Come December, it'll be 2.5 years. Right. Which is when I think it's
so Bayonetta, that if September, that'd be like 1 3/4 years. So not as long as
Metroid.
As Metroid, and technically that's a pretty similar gap to Bayonetta 2. Like that's within normal margins. So that's not anything crazy. It's not like a whole year or anything.
Yeah, Bayonetta 2 was less than 2 years, if based off what I just saw from the announcement trailer. Right. But that doesn't mean that it could be longer. It could take longer. But here's the thing: there was an interview for Bayonetta 3 where they came out and they said, "Hey, look, the development is going very, very well." So if development is going very well and just as planned, that suggests there shouldn't be any delays. So.
Was Bayonetta 2 shown off with gameplay though, or no?
It was a concept trailer too. I think it used like in-engine stuff or something, but it was a concept trailer. It wasn't like full-on normal gameplay trailer.
Was Bayonetta 3's in-engine? No, if they even announced what engine.
No, it doesn't even look like it, to be honest. How do you feel about this, Mars?
I think I don't see how it's a far-fetched idea. Like y'all saying, they were both announced in 2017. We've had games that have come out in shorter periods of time. I think they're both going to come out this year, 2019. Probably different ends of the year. I see Bayonetta being more of an early game, and of course, Metroid being later. But one thing I do want to say is, like, I think when it comes to releasing these games, they might already be done. We don't know, but look at Yoshi. I thought that game was going to come out like when the Switch first came out. But I think Nintendo, these gaming companies, is like double dutch. You got to see when you're going to jump in there, so that they don't really hit you with a hard date. And even then, that can get pushed back. But they just have to see when the window is good too. So when it's prime shopping or whatever the case may be. But I see both of those games coming out in 2019.
Yeah, I mean, the point needs to be made that there's always an air of unpredictability with Nintendo, right? You never really know what they're gonna do. Never. So even when, like, it all makes sense, and I was like, no, we're not doing anything that makes sense. We're just gonna do whatever the hell we want. Like, you never really know. And of course, with development, it's fluid, right? Sometimes things come up. It could be delayed, even if it seems like maybe they initially planned for it to be out by this time, but something comes up and they have to delay it. That's all possible. But when has Bayonetta gone delayed? When has Metroid gone delayed? I think Metroid Prime 3 was actually delayed a little bit, but it came out on the Wii in 2007, and Metroid Prime 2 came out in 2004, right? So, like, it wasn't like a large gap. It was a normal gap. And that's because they had to get a lot of that had to do with mastering the motion controls. So, I think it's happening. I think one of the things with Metroid Prime 4, at least, is because they showed so little. A lot of people felt like that when Nintendo did was, oh, we're starting development today, right? And we're announcing it today. So, if that's the case, then I would say, yeah, you're probably right. Metroid Prime 4 isn't going to come out this year if they started development the moment they announced the game. But
there's no way they did that.
There are exceptions, because I remember years ago when they announced Super Smash Bros. Brawl, Sakurai was in the seats listening to the announcements for Super Smash Bros. Brawl. He was like, "Wait, what? Nintendo making Smash Brothers?" Nintendo hadn't even asked Sakurai to be the director for Brawl yet. So,
that's funny.
There has been times when they've announced things and it's like way off, like they've barely started development. But I don't think that's the Nintendo of today. That was years ago. Most of the time, when they announce something, it's because they know it's actually happening, and it's well into development. Because here's the thing. There have been different Metroid games planned, and Star Fox games, and Kid Icarus games, and they've all been canned. Like, there have been games that the companies have come to Nintendo, it's like, hey, look, we have a working build, and they don't come out. Like, so the fact that Nintendo announced this, it's because they already had I believe they already had a working idea going. They knew that whatever they had working is going to happen. So the premise that they just started development, I think, is highly unlikely. I think, actually, there are LinkedIn profiles. If you follow what Doc Trey's been seeing, what Eurogamer's been reporting about Bandai Namco being the developer for Metroid Prime 4, the LinkedIn profiles are all in support of that. They imply the development has been going on for this game since mid-2016. So that's a whole other year before the announcement. So let's assume that the very beginning of development for Metroid Prime 4 was mid-2016, which it may have been before that, by the way, but let's say mid-2016, the idea that it comes out holiday 2019 is 3.5 years. That's a reasonable development time. I don't think it's crazy.
No, not at all.
But a lot of people feel like it's crazy. That's the thing. So many people come like, no, there's no way it's happening. It's definitely 2020. Yeah. Like, there's just no way. I just kind of feel like there's people that are always going to say, no, it's always a year off. Like, if let's say Metroid Prime 4 doesn't come out this year, they're like, oh, it's a 2021 game.
Yeah.
I think people are too used to companies that just take way too long to make games. Like, guys, I know you're over here. Kingdom Hearts 3 is finally coming out this month. And you've been waiting like 10, 15 years. But it doesn't take that long for every game. Like, that's calm down. It doesn't take 5-6 years for every game to come out. That's just obscene amounts of time for most games. Like, even Breath of the Wild was supposed to come out way before it did. It got pushed back. a lot. And then it got pushed back again. Just the game was pretty much done. They just wanted to get it out at the same time as the Switch. So like, it doesn't like. I don't think this game is going to be on the scale of Breath of the Wild. It's just I don't think it will be. I think it will be in a sense. Like I think they're gonna go and they're gonna really push this game to be something big. But I don't think it's gonna take as nearly as long as that game. I don't know why people are thinking like, oh, since some games like Breath of the Wild take so long, every game takes that long. It's like, no, it doesn't. Do you not remember games like used to take like 2 years to make? Like it didn't always take this long, guys. It's just in recent history, there's just been a trend of games taking way longer than they should.
Well, initially, Breath of the Wild was meant to be a 2015 game.
Yeah.
It was delayed several times, and a lot of that simply had to do with the fact that Nintendo was trying to master this physics engine, and they had to put a lot of extra time to make that work, right? And they accomplished something incredible, but that was why Breath of the Wild took so long. They initially planned the game to come out in 2015, and of course Zelda is infamous for always being delayed, because Zelda is kind of like where Nintendo kind of always pushes the boundary, like, oh, we're gonna make sure this game is as good as it can possibly be. But I mean, I think it's reasonable, but just because I think it's reasonable doesn't mean it's gonna happen, right? So what do you guys think? Like, do any of you guys have a feeling that one of these games won't make it, though? I know we all agree it's not crazy, but are you guys all predicting that both games are coming out this year, or you guys have a feeling that one of them won't make it, or maybe both?
Well, I don't think Bayonetta is coming this year, but I have a feeling Metroid is, because this seems to be like the year of Nintendo's other franchises coming out with new games, so I think it would fit in pretty well. But then again, next year, like, what are they gonna do? Just like make Mario and Zelda again? Like, so maybe they're just saving it for next year because they already have a few other games lined up for this year. But yeah, I don't think Bayonetta is coming, but I do think Metroid probably will be.
Okay.
I just have this weird feeling that Bayonetta's not going to come out this year. I don't know why, but I don't know. I just don't feel like it is.
Yeah, I feel like Bayo, if anyone, is probably gonna be Bayo.
If anyone's gonna be delayed.
Oh yeah, like to 2020. Okay. Like we'll just bring it out 2020. It'll be Bayo.
Okay. Yeah, if we have to choose one, I would say Bayonetta, but the third year of a console is usually the peak year for people to buy consoles.
Yeah.
And I feel like because of that, I think they are really gonna try and have both of them.
Yeah.
Because like this is the year where this is the year they'll make as much money as they possibly can out of it. Like it'll be the best. Hopefully, is the best year for Nintendo Switch as far as console sales, game sales, everything. Like, so I'm thinking they're gonna really try and put both of them out. But yeah, if I had to choose, Bayonetta probably be delayed next year for sure. If it isn't this year, it's gonna be next year. So
yeah, I'm in agreement with you guys that if I had to pick one of the two, I would say that Bayonetta 3 is less likely because, Sean, you brought it up, right? Who was it brought up? That it's not Nintendo that's at response. They're publishing the game, they're helping out with funds and such, but they're not developing the game. So, there's a different standard there. That I agree with that. And also, the game was announced later than Metroid Prime 4. So for those reasons, it makes sense that if it were one of the two, I would say Bayonetta would be the one that's coming out later on. And I also feel like there's been a steady build-up for Metroid. There was a big, interesting focus on Ridley and Zero Suit Samus at the end for E3. Reggie was wearing a lot of mysterious Metroid shirts the last few gaming events, right? We're all thinking that actually, Dusty, you brought it up earlier, the possibility of a Metroid Prime Trilogy HD. A lot of people feel like that could come this year, actually. And that was rumored to be announced at the Game Awards. It didn't happen. So that actually raises another interesting question, though, because if there was like a full-scale Metroid Prime Trilogy HD coming out this year, that could arguably get in the way for a Metroid Prime 4 to come out this year, actually.
Yeah, it definitely would.
So, I've suggested that it's possible that Metroid Prime 4 could come out in, say, February. I mean, Metroid Prime Trilogy HD could come out in, say, February, but it hasn't been announced yet, so I don't feel like February is a likely date anymore. Right? We're still waiting for that January Direct. It may not even happen at this point, but, that idea of it coming out really early in the year, kind of like Bayonetta 1 and 2 last year, increasingly unlikely, but it could still come out at some point in this year. And the later it comes out, the worse it is for Nintendo to release a Metroid Prime 4 this year as well. How do you guys feel about that, though? If Metroid Prime Trilogy HD is coming out this year, does that get in the way of Metroid Prime 4?
I think if Metroid Prime Trilogy comes out this year, it pretty much guarantees Metroid Prime 4 is not coming this year. Because if you look at Nintendo's like remakes and stuff, especially with the 3DS, once a game gets announced for the 3DS, like Luigi's Mansion or Kirby's Epic Yarn, I wouldn't say that, but all the other Kirby games before Star Allies came out, they're like prepping you for a Switch game. It's kind of like to hold you over until the new game comes out, because there's Luigi's Mansion 3 coming out, and they had Kirby Battle Royale before Star Allies came out, and
yeah, that makes sense.
and yeah.
So, I mean, there's a historical precedent. Whenever there's some sort of port or remaster of a series, you don't see the next installments of that series in the same year. I'm having a hard time thinking of an exception. So, that makes sense. The only time would be maybe if there's like 2 different platforms, I think. Like, maybe, like, for example, I think there was a year where we got an HD remake for Zelda, but then we got a 2D Zelda as well. Wind Waker HD came out in 2013 in September. A Link Between Worlds on the 3DS came out in November. So there is... It's 2 different platforms, but there was a Zelda remake and a new Zelda game. Although it wasn't a 3D Zelda, but it was a Zelda game. They came out in the same year within a couple months of each other. It's not the exact same scenario, but it's not impossible, I would say, for a Trilogy HD to come out early 2019 and Metroid Prime 4 come out the very end of 2019. But I do agree that if Trilogy HD is coming this year, it does make it far less likely. It just kind of like, why would Nintendo do that? Like, if they can make money off one Metroid game this year and save the other for next year, why wouldn't they? Because that's more money for them, right? But I'm of the frame of mind that there isn't even going to be a Metroid Prime Trilogy HD at this point.
Yeah. Especially if it's going to come out early this year, why would they wait so long to announce it? Like, what's the point of that?
If they do announce it, it'll probably be like April or May, because April has so many like ports coming on in April, so maybe April or May. I think if it does come, that's when it would be released.
It's just weird because there's like a bunch of 2019 games that were announced. Why would you not, if it's coming out early and it's this remaster, why would you not have announced that? You announced Luigi's Mansion 3 and Animal Crossing and all this other stuff, and you're just like, no, we're not shocking and announce this.
There's a possibility it's not an early game. It's coming out later in the year, and it's just not. It's just the Metroid game for the year. Like, if Metroid Prime 4 is not this year, Trilogy HD could be a holiday game.
Right.
It's possible.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think it would come out this year early.
Right. If I feel like if the trilogy doesn't come out this year and Prime 4 does, I just don't think we're even going to get that trilogy.
No.
I feel.
Yeah, that'd be
They're just
weird.
not going to take the time. They're just going to focus on Prime 4 at that point.
Yeah, and personally, I feel like the Metroid series, you don't need to play a previous Metroid game to enjoy the next Metroid game. Like, the stories are separate. Like, you can look into the lore and do the scans, and you can get kind of a better understanding of the backstory, but you never need the backstory. That's never really essential to the experience of the game. So it's kind of like, really is kind of like a Legend of Zelda or Super Mario game, where you don't need to have played previous Super Mario games or Zelda games to enjoy that current one. The only problem is that the Metroid series, the Metroid Prime series at least, they've been using numbers, and they called it Metroid Prime 4. So we know the title's pending, so maybe they'll scrap the 4, but that aspect of having the 4 suggests that there is a story, there's a kind of a cycle going on, and that, some people may be like, oh, well, I haven't played previous Metroid Prime games, so maybe I shouldn't play this one because of that 4, like that marketing. I wonder if they'll just scrap the 4 if it is coming out this year, and just from now on just call them Metroid Prime and just have a subtitle like they do for Zelda and Super Mario. I feel like they should do that.
Yeah.
That'd be a good idea.
So I mean, like, when I was young and I went to go buy Mario Galaxy 2 was out as well, and I was like, oh, everyone was telling me, oh, you should buy Mario Galaxy 2, and I was like, but I haven't played the first one, and of course Mario doesn't have a story, but I thought maybe, you know, this one did, and I was like, well, I gotta play the first one first, and so I bought the first one. So it makes sense. People be like, oh, but I haven't played these other 3 Metroid games, and even more so with Metroid, because, you know, Mario is known to not have a story. Metroid at least has some story in it, and it's kind of known quantity. So I think it would kind of confuse people, and they'd be like, oh, well, maybe I should. I haven't played these other games. Why would I go pick up this 4th one randomly?
Yeah, I think that's kind of a problem, and especially because it's been so many years since a Metroid game. So that's why people have been talking about Metroid Prime trilogy. But I'm just not feeling a trilogy. I don't. At this point, I'm not feeling it anymore. If it happens, at this point, I think it's because Prime 4 is not coming out this year. Yeah. Like, because I was originally thinking that if it is happening, it's because it's like an early 2019 release. But now, yeah, I think we've pretty much passed that window. Unless Nintendo announces a direct next week, it's like, hey, Trilogy HD coming out February 14. Enjoy. Yeah. Like, unless that happens, I think it's more safe to say that it's one or the other. And based off there was a strong rumor of Trilogy HD being at the Game Awards, I just feel like that may have just been a false rumor that everyone kind of believed. I don't know. It's weird. I do think we're gonna see something Metroid this year for sure, and I think it's Metroid Prime 4. It's been a long time coming. I think the signs have been pointing towards it. Like, we've gotten something Metroid every year. Last year we didn't get a Metroid game, but we had the whole Ridley reveal. Like, they kind of hyped that up. The year before that we had Samus Returns. The year before that we had Federation Force. And, like, there was the interviews coming from Kensuke Tanabe, the Prime producer, talking about the story back in 2015. So, like, it's been a build-up for this game. So I do believe the Prime 4 is like Nintendo's hardcore game for the holiday season, because Pokemon is more of the mainstream game. I think Metroid is going to be kind of like the Smash Brothers or the Xenoblade 2 kind of like hardcore entry at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An interesting point I just thought for Bayonetta 3 is, I think it would make more sense for it to come out this year since 1 and 2 were released on the Switch last year. That way, yeah, it's more fresh in your mind. You can kind of jump right on into it instead of, like, you know, I replayed this game 2 years ago and now finally the 3rd one's coming out. Like, I feel like it's a little bit of a weird time frame if they waited that long between the remasters on the Switch to then the 3rd game, because that came out like right after they announced them, like just a few months. And then they to wait like 2 years for them to come out with a new game would be a little weird.
Yeah,
over 2 years.
I think that's an interesting argument for Bayonetta 3 this year as well. The only thing I want to add to that is that I recently made a video talking about how, like, if you look at the last couple of years and the amount of games Nintendo's been publishing that are retail titles, the number of 3DS games has been going down, the number of Switch games has been going up. And it suggests that we could be seeing about 20 retail Nintendo published games come out this year. The numbers last year was 18. This year could be higher. Right. And with that amount of games coming out with the 3DS, they're really trying not to completely kill off the 3DS. So there's going to be some 3DS games to come out this year, but it is going down a little by little every year. So I do expect there to be even more Switch first-party games to come out this year. And with that big number of about 20 published games, that's what the trend suggests at least. Nintendo could go against the trend that's always possible. If you look at the last few years, not just the last two, last few, like, it's gone in that direction. I feel like if there's that many games to come out, like Bayonetta 3, a game that was announced over a year ago, is a likely candidate. So, you know, I've suggested it. I think this year could be like you said, Nonsense Nerd, that it's like this peak year. We could see a lot of heavy hitters. We already know we're getting Fire Emblem, Animal Crossing, Yoshi, Luigi's Mansion, and Pokemon. What if they add 2 or 3 more games to that list? Metroid Prime 4, Star Fox Grand Prix, that's a random rumor game, and Bayonetta 3. If all 8 games will come out this year, I think it's feasible. Is it gonna happen? I don't know. I can see 1 or 2 of those not happening, but I would say of Bayonetta 3 and Metroid Prime 4, at least one is bound to happen this year, and I wouldn't be shocked if we see both.
Yeah, I think it's Switch's year this year. I think they're really gonna try and put out just the best in as much game as possible, because it's just gonna be that big of a year. And I think people expecting, oh, we're getting all these games, so there's no way they're gonna put these games out. I think that's the hype that Nintendo needs, is when they do announce like Metroid Prime and Bayonetta in the same year alongside these other games. It's just gonna get more people to just hop on board with the Switch right away. And then if they do release the rumored console that's coming out, whether it's the mini or if it's like a pro version or something, that will also add to it as well. That, yeah, it's just gonna be a great year for Switch. Even I would say as far as better than this previous year. We got friggin' Smash Bros. So yeah. I don't know.
I think so. And I mean, they also have the Smash DLC, bringing all these different third-party characters. Like, that's gonna help as well. Like, there's a lot of things coming. Yeah, there's a lot going really well for the Switch in this third year. And historically speaking, the third year is the peak year.
Yeah. Also, third-party games are like looking pretty good too. We got Daemon X Machina, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, potentially Bayonetta 3. Like, yeah, it's definitely gonna be a lot better than last year.
11.
And the ports are interesting too. Yeah, like Mortal Kombat 11. We got exactly Crash Team Racing. Even some interesting announcements like Dragon's Dogma. I'm kind of interested to see how that turns out as well. And we're just getting started. This is January.
Witcher 3.
Possibly, yeah.
That's the rumor. Yeah. I would like. I want to see how that's gonna run. There's a lot of potential. So yeah, guys, for those watching, let me know what you guys think about if we're gonna see either one of these games this year, Metroid Prime 4 or Bayonetta 3, and just how you feel about the Switch's year in general, of how well you think 2019 is going to be. But anyways, everyone, thank you so much for listening and watching. Is there anything else you guys want to add before we call it a day?
No, I'm just kind of, I think the discussion has led me to believe that I think both of them are going to come.
Yeah, they got it both come out. Yeah.
All right.
I still pretty much have the same opinion that like, Bayonetta's not, but Metroid I feel like it will be.
Okay. All right. Cool. I'm okay with that. So yeah, guys, make sure to check out everyone. I'll put a link to each of their channels in the description below. Please check them out. They are all awesome. And yeah, we'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.